the fragmented mirror of creation and the thread of attraction. Welcome to a journey that seeks not to convince, but to awaken. This is not a class on dogma, nor a moral sermon, but an exploration at the crossroads where faith and reason hold hands, and attraction reveals itself as the primordial language of the universe. Today, we're going to dismantle one of the most deeply ingrained premises in our collective psyche, that of a distant, detached God, and a human being who can only be a victim or a sinner. Imagine for a moment that attraction isn't just a biological whim or a social trick, but a fundamental law of cosmology, a resonance that links the galaxy to the cell, thought to destiny. From the perspective of the psychology of attraction, we're taught that we attract what we are, what we vibrate. If this is true on a personal level, what are the implications for our relationship with the universe, with the source of all that exists, with what many call God? Quantum physics whispers in our ear that reality is not a static object but a field of possibilities that collapses into the form we observe. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which in human terms tells us that a particle's position and momentum cannot be known precisely at the same time, reminds us that the very nature of matter is elusive, dynamic, a constant flow of potential. Neuroscience, for its part, shows us how our brains, far from being passive receivers, are architects of our reality. The hippocampus and amygdala don't just process information, they infuse it with emotional meaning, creating filters that decide what's real and what isn't. This is where the first great fusion occurs. If the universe is a field of quantum potential, and our brain is the observer that collapses that potential into a particular reality, who's the villain in this equation? A God who punishes us, or a human being who has lost the instruction manual for co-creating their reality? Chaos and complexity theory tell us that systems, no matter how unpredictable they seem, have underlying patterns, strange attractors that bring them into order. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can trigger a hurricane in Texas. This concept, seemingly chaotic, teaches us something profound about interconnectedness. Our psyche, our self, is a complex system. A thought of resentment, a vibration of fear, is not just an internal event but a flutter that resonates in the field of potential. And what does that flutter attract? More of the same. At this point, astrobiology offers us a humbling perspective. Life, as we know it, is a statistical miracle, an improbability that manifested in a corner of the cosmos. What if attraction isn't just between human beings, but between life itself and the source of life? Chaos and complexity theory tell us that systems, no matter how unpredictable they seem, have underlying patterns, strange attractors that bring them into order. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can trigger a hurricane in Texas. This concept, seemingly chaotic, teaches us something profound about interconnectedness. Our psyche, our self, is a complex system. A thought of resentment, a vibration of fear, is not just an internal event but a flutter that resonates in the field of potential. And what does that flutter attract? More of the same. At this point, astrobiology offers us a humbling perspective. Life, as we know it, is a statistical miracle, an improbability that manifested in a corner of the cosmos. What if attraction isn't just between human beings, but between life itself and the source of life? Theoretical and systems biology reveals that organisms aren't just the sum of their parts, but networks of information, of signals that communicate to maintain a balance, a homeostasis. What if illness isn't a punishment, but the breakdown of that homeostasis, the imbalance between the individual I and the universal flow? Here, religions offer an ancient echo. In Islam, the concept of Tawhid, the oneness of God, is not just a declaration of faith but a worldview that sees all creation as a manifestation of the divine. Like a hologram, each part contains the information of the whole. If we don't maintain balance, if we stray from this oneness, isn't it logical that our reality would fragment and our attraction would become disharmonious? In Hinduism, the concept of dharma refers to the cosmic duty, the intrinsic order of the universe, and our role in it. When we live out of harmony with our dharma, we create negative karma. Karma isn't punishment, it's a law of cause and effect. What you attract is a consequence of what you emit. Evil isn't an external being, but the result of our own misaligned actions. Now, for the controversial part. What if we aren't sinners who need redemption, but unconscious observers who need to wake up? What if the figure of a god is nothing more than the personification of the universal law of attraction in its purest form? What if hell isn't a place, but the manifestation of our own chaotic psyche, a belief system that attracts misery? Transpersonal psychology invites us to transcend the egoic identity, to recognize that we are more than the sum of our traumas and conditioning. It suggests that the path to healing and genuine attraction is through reconnecting with that higher self, that being which is in tune with the flow of life. Philosophy of mind, for its part, asks if consciousness is an emergent property of the brain or if it is a fundamental field of the universe, with the brain merely being its receiver. The implication is profound. If consciousness is fundamental, then our ability to attract and manifest isn't a mental trick, it's a law of nature. The Bible tells us, "So God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him." Genesis 1 verse 27. Interpreted through the lens of information theory and the psychology of attraction, this phrase isn't just a theological declaration, it's a formula. If we are the image of the source, we carry within our DNA the capacity to create, to attract, to manifest. The problem, the original sin, wouldn't be disobedience, but the forgetting of our nature, the disconnection from the source and our own co-creative capacity. The Buddha taught us that suffering arises from attachment. But attachment isn't just to material things, it's to ideas, roles, and the narrative of our own life. Attraction isn't attachment. Attraction is resonance. When we attach, we are forcing, pushing. When we resonate, we are allowing, attracting. Evil isn't an external entity that tempts us, but the manifestation of attachment that creates imbalance in our psyche and, by extension, in our reality. The non-existent symphony and the lost conductor. Now, let's delve into the abyss of self-awareness. If we are the bad guys, the ones who unbalance the system, how can we correct our course? The answer lies in attraction, but a conscious attraction, one that doesn't seek to manipulate reality but to align with it. Cosmology, in its grandeur, shows us an expanding universe. But that expansion isn't chaotic. The universe has an architecture, an underlying geometry that allows stars to form and galaxies to cluster. Mathematics is the language of that architecture. The golden ratio, pi, the Fibonacci sequence. These aren't just numbers but codes that nature uses to manifest beauty and order. What if genuine attraction, the kind that connects us to the universe, also obeys a mathematical code, a divine proportion, and intrinsic balance? Information theory tells us that information is neither created nor destroyed, it's only transformed. Our thoughts, our emotions, are information. What kind of information are we transmitting to the universe? Is it a signal of chaos, of imbalance, or is it a coherent, harmonious wave? Evil in this context is the corruption of information, the noise in the signal. If we think we're victims, we're transmitting a signal of helplessness. And the universe, like a mirror, returns that very image to us. In Judaism, the Torah presents us with a covenant, an alliance between God and the people. But this covenant isn't an imposition, it's a guide to living in harmony, in balance. Evil isn't disobedience to a law but the breaking of the covenant, the rupture of the relationship, the loss of guidance. When humans lose their balance, we stray from the covenant, and our attraction becomes erratic, drawing consequences that reflect our own lack of harmony. Taoism, in its ancient wisdom, speaks of the Tao, the way, the natural flow of the universe. It teaches us that the key isn't to force things but to flow with that way. The concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, isn't passivity but action that is in tune with the natural flow. Evil isn't a malevolent force but the resistance to that flow, the struggle against the current. And, as in the psychology of attraction, resistance creates friction, and friction creates disharmony. Transpersonal psychology teaches us that the path to self-mastery is the path to self-acceptance. Acceptance isn't resignation but embracing the totality of our experience, the light and the shadow. Only when we accept our own darkness can we integrate it and transform it into light. Evil is the projected shadow, the part of ourselves that we've rejected and which, therefore, attracts experiences that force us to confront it. Philosophy of mind confronts us with the idea of intentionality, the mind's ability to refer to objects and states of affairs. Our intentionality isn't a passive thought, it's an arrow aimed at the universe. If our intentionality is loaded with fear, resentment, and lack, what are we attracting? Evil is misaligned intentionality, the kind that is not in harmony with the greater good. The Quran tells us, indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in their souls. Al-Arad 13:11. This phrase, interpreted in the light of information theory and the psychology of attraction, is a manifesto of the human being's co-creative power. Change doesn't come from an external source but from a change in the information we transmit, the vibration of our soul. Buddhism speaks of the concept of anatta, the no-self or the absence of a permanent ego. This concept, which at first glance can be unsettling, is the key to true attraction. When we stop identifying with the small I that is a victim of circumstances, we open ourselves to the vastness of the no-self, which is in tune with the universe. Evil is the illusion of the ego that separates us, that makes us believe we are alone and helpless. In conclusion, the existence of a God isn't a matter of blind faith but of logic. If the universe operates with laws, with an order, with an architecture, isn't it reasonable to postulate an intelligence, a consciousness underlying those laws? The God we have invented, the Punisher, the Avenger, is a projection of our own imbalance. It's a reflection of our own shadow, of our lack of balance. We are the bad guys, not in the sense of being inherently corrupt beings, but in the sense of being conductors of a symphony orchestra who have forgotten how to read the score. The universe is the symphony, the score is written in the laws of quantum physics, cosmology, biology, and mathematics. And we, with our fragmented psyche, have created a dissonant noise, a chaos that returns misery to us. But attraction is the key. Not to manipulate the universe, but to align with it. When our vibration is raised, when our intentionality aligns with the greater good, when our consciousness expands, the symphony once again sounds in harmony. And in that harmony, we realize that God is not outside, judging us. God is the flow, the balance, the source of which we are co-creators. The path to mastery is not blind obedience, but the reconnection with our own divinity. And that is the journey of true attraction, to attract not what we want, but what we are. And when what we are is love, harmony, and balance, the universe has no choice but to give us more of that. Thank you very much for joining us on this journey of exploration. We will continue to create content that awakens consciousness and opens the mind, and we would love for you to help us shape the path. Let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to discuss so we can continue learning and sharing ideas in a space of mutual respect and growth. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, activate notifications, share it, and follow me so the conversation doesn't end here. Until next time, and remember, knowledge expands when it is shared.